Yeah, good morning, and thanks for being here. I must say that in the beginning of this conference, I felt like a strange alien to this world. But listening to the speakers and the talks in the last 2 days, I learned that we actually speak the same language. And I picked up on many terms and words that I also use, but from a very different perspective. And in this talk, I want to introduce you to that perspective of rewilding, why it's punk to nature conservation, and share a little bit of the work that we do as a small-scale rewilding initiative in Sicily. And I hope that at the end of the talk, you're as hooked as I am on rewilding, and then we can make together this place a little wilder world. And I want to start right here, at this sweet spot where I think all of us feel quite home between utopia and pragmatism. And both the crypto world and the rewilding movement are crazy optimistic and challenge beliefs and systems quite drastically, while simultaneously being very real and on the ground and already rolling out through the world. And the first term I picked up here is the word of ecosystems. And when I talk about ecosystems, I usually mean this, landscapes. And like in our European landscapes, we usually see this beautiful stages of nice theaters, but without actors. And the actors of these landscapes is wildlife. And we have very few of them left in Europe. And this is the first key aspect that rewilding brings to the conversation, or to conservation, is that wildlife plays a key role in making these ecosystems work. So we move away from protecting static habitats to ecosystems with elements, functions, and processes. And if you think about it, for example, like grasslands, they co-evolve together with animals that eat grasses, or herbivores. Their saliva actually makes grasses grow better. And that's the same for carnivores and predators. Like, they have an enormous role in ecosystems that we just understand now. And they have such an important role to ecosystems that they can actually change the very physiology of landscapes. And this effect of these carnivores is called cascade effect, or trophic cascades. And it's probably best illustrated by a very famous place that maybe some of you have visited. That's a picture from the Yellowstone Park, and the world's first national park. And back in the 90s, they introduced a pack of wolves, like 60, back to the park. And the wolves found an ecosystem, or the riverbanks, stripped of vegetation. They were overgrazed by elk and deer population. And when the wolves arrived, they kept the population a bit in check. But most importantly, they changed the entire behavior of these herbivores. They moved back to the safe forest and allowed willow and aspen coming back to the riverbanks. These new trees allowed the beaver to come back, that we learned about already in the first opening talk of this conference, coming back to Prague as well. Quite similar here, with the trees, the beaver arrived, and the beaver did the beaver things, basically avoiding erosion of the rivers and allowing natural flooding back into the landscape. So quite literally, these wolves changed the course of the rivers. And I guess that's the first point that I want you to take away from what ecosystem processes mean to rewilding, and the term often used in the crypto world. So we move away from protecting one habitat, one species, in encouraging ecosystem processes back to the landscape. And you might say, well, that's nice for like national parks and in North America. What about Europe? And maybe if you think about wilderness in Europe, what place does not necessarily come to mind? And I'm sorry, probably the Netherlands. But it's precisely there where one of the second pillars of rewilding was tested and experimented with. Around the same time, where wolves came back to Yellowstone, there was a young ecologist called Franz Vera, and I'm going to spare you of pronouncing the name of the place. But he understood very well the importance of wildlife in ecosystems, but he even challenged our beliefs of what the natural state of our European landscapes could look like. And he supported his hypothesis that probably it wasn't a green world, but more a brown and black one, more like a Serengeti-style landscape and not these thick green forests. So he brought back big herbivores. He brought back wild ponies and sturdy breeds of cattle, and left them out doing their herbivore things. And the effects of it was enormous. The place bursted out into wildlife, birds coming back, small mammals, and it has a great effect. And the theory behind this experiment is perspective, I guess. Usually we talk about baselines, so what we perceive nature is or should look like. And nature conservation has its baseline maybe pre-industrial, that's pristine nature, or for North American case, pre-Columbus landing. And rewilding goes even further back, around 12,000 years, with first human settlement and when you start doing agriculture. And taking this as a baseline before the mega herbivore extinction. And of course, the goal is not to go back and recreate these Pleistocene landscapes. It's more about it gives us perspective and ambition for the future, that our planet can host so much more wildlife that we even think could be possible. And that's a very exciting goal where rewilding goes a bit beyond and challenges traditional nature conservation. So I think that's the second point that I would like you to take away from rewilding, is that it gives us new and bold ambitions. And these more historic examples are now rolling out throughout Europe, and we see that everywhere. There's wild horses coming back to Portugal and actually avoiding wildfires by creating mosaic landscapes. There is the famous beaver that we talked about in the beginning, not only coming back to Prague, but coming back to the UK and taking back their role as ecosystem engineers. And quite beautifully and impressively, the European bison coming back to our landscapes, to Romania, to Poland, and rejuvenating entire forests. And many, many more everywhere. And I hope that we, as Collettivo Rewild Sicily, are also part of this movement. We're a small non-profit based in Sicily, in the Mediterranean's largest island, and trying to bring about also rewilding actions in our home. And our ecosystem challenge that we deal with is mainly this: it's wildfires. This is a picture from last summer, just around Palermo. And understanding the causes of wildfires is twofolded. One is we have extreme fire-prone landscapes full of eucalyptus and pine. We have no more herbivores that keep the understory in check, land abandonment, you name it. And the second one is more sociocultural. So there is no natural fire in Sicily. They're all human-made, and most of them intentionally, for many different reasons, between crime, speculation, weird land management practices. But apart from all of these reasons, luckily we already know most of the solutions. And bringing them on the land can look like this, where our institutions fail us, people need to step in and actually do fire response. So one project that we did is that we trained the people that are already there putting out fires, but at least do it safely, which is illegal, by the way. And so we trained these civilians, we bought equipment, we built together tools, and that looked then a bit like this. Looking at wildfires is probably the thing that leaves you most feeling powerless, and you can't do anything about that. But doing this together and as a community can unfold all of these dynamics that we heard also here of like community empowerment, and probably leads to two responses of that should be quite familiar to you. And I guess there are self-organization and decentralized expertise where institutions just can't keep up. We need to step in, not as individuals, but as a community. And the second project that I want to share with you is starting with the challenge of cultural desertification, so the loss of traditional and ecological knowledge. And I think that is quite comparable with many Mediterranean places where you have land abandonment, people going away, etc. And this cultural desertification is paired up with that we only now understand the importance of indigenous knowledge and communities for nature conservation. Like, we have failed every single goal we ever put out to protect nature as a global society. And now also, big guys, the UN recognizes the importance of indigenous people and knowledge. So we're wondering, okay, what does this mean for Sicily? Who are the holders of this local ecological knowledge in our case? Certainly not conservationists or people speaking at conferences, but people who are out there in the territory every day. And in our case, these are hunters, shepherds, and forestry workers. And our goal was to not only valorize their knowledge, but make it accessible to the public, not depending on generation and family bonds, and put it at service for Rewilding Sicily. And we did this with a data gathering tool. It's called Cyber Tracker. Cyber Tracker allows you to do a customizable app for your region and collect any kind of data that you want to. It was originally developed in South Africa with a team around Louis Liebenberg in the 90s, working with scientists, conservationists, and local indigenous wildlife trackers. And I'll show you the interface that we made. Bear with me. It was made by biologists for people like hunters, so this is sort of the result. And I think potential collaboration opportunities is quite clear there. But apart from the data gathering aspects, it was more important the social ones. Like, we work with marginalized groups which already have issues dialoguing among each other, leave alone ecology people like us. What helped that we used a language which is not word-based, but the landscape itself, talking about wildlife tracks, about signs of fires, use of humans of the land. And that helped to develop this common language. The challenge now, maybe also for some of you, is to make a solid business case out of all of this keyword, I guess, is community knowledge that is gathered with all these different cyber tracker projects around the globe, and valorize it also in a monetary sense of that. The last project that I want to share with you starts with European rivers, and they are quite literally dammed. I think we have only one river left in Europe which is free-flowing, so which doesn't have infrastructure in it. The case for Sicily is that back in the 70s, they just poured a lot of money into that, and most of the dams they built were never used, and they're certainly obsolete today. So they're sitting in the landscape, having no function, most of them, and still causing a lot of negative ecological impacts. And especially for migratory fish, who depend on wiggling up the streams and doing all the ecological services there. The problem is in Sicily that we don't know anything about them. There is not a map or data available where they are, in what state they are, how they can be removed. So we need to do that. We're starting next month, so if you happen to be there, come join us. We're using an app which is called Ember, developed around the European dam removal movement. And we will map all the dams of the river, assess their status, and then together with local public authorities, decide which one we can remove to have an important ecological impact. This matters especially for creatures like this one. This is the European eel. They are not only fascinating animals, so don't get me started on eels, but we don't know anything about them. And we risk that they get lost before we have fully understood them. Their populations are plummeting, but we know they need free-flowing rivers. So there are many other animals that will benefit from that, and is probably one of the most important rewilding challenges in Europe that we all need to do, and is so tangible and in reach. And yeah, so we're going to set out of this one, and I think the key word connected to rivers is open source ecodata that we need and make accessible and make use of it. And to conclude, I think there's a great alliance between Kryptonians, SolarPunkers, and Rewilders, unfolding like 3 main points probably. And the one is a deep sense of future, like moving away from this doom and gloom narrative towards an actually desirable future, a world that we really want to live in. And the second one is, I find that very exciting, is the human role. So us, where is our story? And we can move beyond this humanity as the cancer of the earth and take back our role as stewards and custodians, where it can not be destructive, but regenerative. And rewilding offers that quite practically. And the third one is something I heard a lot here in the last days, is the role of the path and the process. And in rewilding, we called it letting nature lead. So being a bit more humble and bold on the same time. And with that one, I hope, please do feel free to reach out for eel and non-eel related chats. And I hope with some forces united, we can make this world a wilder place and a happier place to live in together. Thank you.
Thank you, Hanna, for the fascinating talk. Thank you. And we still have some time for a bunch of questions. Grace, please.
So considering the general demographics of the crypto space, if we join the dam project, do we get to blow shit up?
Oh, I get this question quite a lot. The honest answer is not. But there are bobcats. They're also fun. Yeah.
Thank you. Any more questions?
Hi, thanks for your talk. At some point you asked, or you kind of made a call to action for making a business case around starting to kind of nurture some of these projects. How do you imagine that working? Like everything you've spoken about seems like it's about ecology and good things in nature, and business cases always make me think about corporate culture and extractive economics. And I personally don't see how those things fit together, but maybe you can sort of shed light on what you mean by a business case in this context.
Yeah. I guess most ecology projects and nonprofits in general have the issue of funding. No? We all need some money to pay people to do this important work. So not depending on fundraising, donations, and public grants, etc. There are great ways to have more solid income, and especially for people like trekkers. And that would be amazing if their knowledge and the work that they do can be also turned into money and making a living of it. What we produce with the cyber trackers, for example, is data. And what I heard around here, the last 2 days, that's the basis of it all, no? Turning data into tokens, into assets, and making money out of this, not pushing into the mega capitalistic world, but so people can actually make a living of the work that they already do, putting its services for all of us. So that's there. There's the Cybertrucker world, very much in the social and ecology corner, but there are assets produced, which being like wildlife data, and they're looking for ways how to turn that into money and an income for people who produce that data. If I knew the response, I think we would have done it already. So that's more I'm sure there must be a business case behind it. Business in a sense of not the mega startup idea, but to attribute an income to people who gather this data.
Thank you. Still one or two more questions? If not, then thank you very much once more, Hanna. And see you in 5 minutes.